Okay, I would like to call this August 9th, 2022 regular meeting of the Medina County Appraisal District to order at 6:04. First item of business is to establish a quorum, and we are missing, well, one active in our ad hoc member, but we do have our quorum if you would register the attendees that are here. Next item on the agenda is an opportunity to recognize visitors for any public comment. If you are here to comment, I would ask you just to introduce yourself and we will give you the floor. Sir.
I'm here to listen
Okay, very good.
this time.
I was just going to give you plenty of time to talk to us. Okay, so there are no visitors wishing to comment at this time, so we will move on. The first item of action is item number 4 on your agenda, and that's open a public hearing for the 2023 final budget. So I will officially open up that hearing. And do you have copies of that budget?
Yes, everyone should have it in their stack.
I bought my copies, so I didn't print it. Okay. No, I'm
You have an extra? Maybe it's in that, I don't know.
everybody has that,
Budget.
that budget, that's the budget we talked about last time, and I, since you went home with it, I want to study it and come back with any questions, so.
2023.
Yeah, there's a final.
Johnette's not here, but do y'all have any questions that, she's at the top here, I'm sure.
I don't, we talked about it at length last meeting, so.
Jody, anything came up?
No, sir.
Okay. I'll wait for Johnette to return, but it doesn't sound like there's, if y'all don't have any questions, we have the option of passing that budget this evening, rather than have to have another meeting 2 weeks from now. So if it pleases my board, I would recommend that we have a motion to that extent when Johnette gets back. Johnette does not want to get any pictures what we're waiting on. So.
Do you want to come?
Yeah. No, we got this publicity on this bill.
Did you want to come?
Thank you.
Normally not.
Might be more to come.
Yeah. Johnette, I have asked my board if they have any questions for you or your staff. I know we went over this extensively at our last meeting and took it home to study, and there are no questions, so unless you have comments, I'm ready to call for a vote on the passage of the budget.
There's no changes from preliminary to final.
Okay. May I entertain a motion to approve the 2023 final budget?
I so move.
In a second,
Okay,
please.
I'll second.
Been properly moved and seconded. All those in favor of approving the 2023 final budget as presented, please say aye.
Aye.
That motion was carried. And with that, I will close. I had the opportunity to ask public comments, and I apologize if you had any comments on our budget.
I just wanted to know who prepared it.
Staff prepares it, and presented to the board at the last meeting, and we went over it and made suggestions. Okay. With that, I will close the public hearing on the final budget and move back to our regular meeting. And at that time, item number 7 is approval of the July 12th Board of Directors meeting minutes. And those were sent to you all by email and also in the packet here this evening. If anybody has any corrections.
I think the wrong minute.
It's
Sorry, I meant out the wrong minute.
Let's put that on hold. I printed it.
This is what she sent us.
printed the wrong ones, let's get the right one in your packet.
Did you have a chance to read them on, I read them on the email, I didn't see anything.
Oh, the minutes?
Right.
I did.
I think those were the same ones.
Yeah, it's the same one.
Yeah, same
Was
ones.
it the same one? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't pick up the date.
Yeah. I didn't catch that either, and I read it. That's what happens when you don't meet every month. Sometimes we meet, well, what do we meet, about 6 times a year?
Well, I think just the date is wrong.
You think so?
Yeah,
Well, I read it, I thought it sounded like the right meeting.
Me too.
because if you look down,
It is, it's the right meeting, it's the wrong
yeah, if you look down at the
The wrong
bottom,
date?
the adjournment, next meeting is scheduled for August 9th, which is
Well,
today.
well, that's what I thought I read on the email, so we'll just amend those in a motion for approval and the date at the top. Do you all have any amendments or suggestions or correction?
Mr. President, I move we approve meetings of the July 12th, 2022 meeting.
Motion by Cordell. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Jody. All those in favor of that motion, please say aye.
Aye.
That motion is carried. And with that, I'm going to turn the meeting over to the lady on the I'm going to look at our financial report coming up. And you got the financials in the package that was emailed to you as well.
So everyone is up to date, as far as payments, everyone's made 3 quarterly payments. We have paid for appraisal notice preparation, paid for part of the board, appraisal review board members, maintenance that we do every
On the
month.
appraisal review board, you just have any idea how we're going to,
We're gonna be
stack up.
over budget.
but have you estimated where we will be on that? I know those hearings have run long.
Right, we still have probably another 2 weeks.
And what's 2 weeks due to your budget?
We're probably gonna be about 5,000 short.
We won't know that till our next
Right,
meeting.
till the-
Okay,
right.
We'll discuss that. Okay, go ahead.
Everything else is pretty much made, the payments that need to be paid so far. I think that's the only thing so far that looks like it's gonna run over budget. Everything else is staying pretty much under budget.
Property tax appraisal and consulting, that's gonna still stay within budget, you think?
Yes.
Okay. Tell me again what is special services, and will you tell me that?
That's like Marshall and Swift, and then we get the state listing of commercial vehicles that we pay for, and I think what else comes out of there.
Do you normally pay
Guide-
that late in the year?
Most guides that we use come out of that one.
Okay. We're so under budget now, but I guess that's an expense that you incur in the fall.
Right.
Anybody have any questions, Jeanette, regarding comparison to budget?
I do not.
Mr. President, I move we approve the financial report as presented.
I'll second that.
Jody second. All those in favor of approving the financial report, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. At this time, I'm going to open the public hearing for the 23-24 reappraisal plan. That is this probably 75 pages, well, probably 60 pages. But, turn that over to Johnette. And this is basically the guidelines that the appraisal district is using, and it is updated every 2 years. So you're welcome to look at it.
I'd like to have one.
It's available.
Thank you.
Johnette, were there any significant or major changes?
The main changes are the calendar events for 23, 24, and 25, which will be beginning on page 19. And that just shows what will start in August and what the state requires to be done in those months by the dates when the meetings are.
And is it just date changes, or have they added to or taken?
No, this one is just basically the changes, is all this one is. And then the only other thing will be our reappraisal cycle. Year one will be, which is this year, will be Hondo ISD, Natalia ISD, and Lytle ISD. And then year two will be Medina Valley North Side, and then year three will be Devine and Dehennis. And so, and then in between that, we continue to monitor sales and that kind of stuff. And we may end up doing more spot reappraisals as needed, depending on what the market does. But the full school districts that are, we're required, or not required, but according to our rotation is, as I stated. And so that's the only other change that's been made in there is which school districts.
And where would that be in this plan?
It will be on, for year
Just for your
Year one will be on page 30.
Will that have any conflict with the school districts on the way they set their budget?
No, this is just where we do the reappraisals, where we look at each property in those school districts. We are required to do a reappraisal every 3 years for properties. And so that's the cycle we're on now is, we just did Devine to Dehennis. And so now we're on track to do Hondo, Lytle, and Natalia.
But every year, you've got to do a blanket reappraisal based on what
On the
statistics are
markets,
telling
on
what the market's
on the
doing.
sales.
Right.
But according to this, you try to look at every property within those three rotation.
Right.
Does it mean you look at it on the computer and on the file, or you actually try to go lay eyes on it? You
If
can
we
imagine
can't
you
get
can
on,
lay eyes.
well, if we can't get to it on the ground, we'll look at it by aerial.
But you actually
We try
touch every
to
file.
as much as we can, yeah. And a lot of it we can't on the ranches, but the subdivisions we do.
And Johnette, where's it indicating which, so in the 2023 work plan outline reappraisal year one?
So, I thought it had the school there, it
Yeah, I
actually,
don't.
it's actually on another page that it lists the cycle.
It's probably on
I
page
apologize for
32.
that, I thought I had it in that part of it.
I think it's on page 32.
Doesn't have the school districts listed. Okay, yeah, it'll be 32, we'll start there. There's also on page 9, it has, according to divided in 3 areas, it's got the estimated parcel count and then which school districts and what we'll be doing within those school districts. And then in the work plan, then it lists each school district.
In the plan, do y'all have a process for, say, you know, property's either flagged for reappraisal or it's coming up in the rotation, what is the process? You mail out a letter out or something to the owner to set that up to?
Right,
To
the
meet them, or-
subdivisions, we don't, we usually, unless we have to get a gate code, then we try to get in touch with somebody on the homeowner association to
Yeah.
get a gate code. Otherwise, we just go out. A lot of the ranches, we will send a gate lock letter just to begin with, because most of the ranches are locked anyways.
Yeah,
And then we've found out by either septic or mechanics liens or something like that, that there is been a change to the property. So at that point, then we send out the gate lock letter, try to make appointments. Or if it comes across on our pictometry, we have change finder.
Yeah.
And so the program will compare each flight, and if something shows up on the second flight that wasn't on the first flight, then it highlights it, and so then we tag that account, and then we'll get in contact with them if we can, or if we can actually just get out there and do it without having to get behind a gate lock, or lock gate. But most of the time, like I said, on the ranches, the gates are locked, so we will send a letter out to try and get on the property.
okay. Well, I would have had a concerned taxpayer, and he just mentioned something to the effect that it seemed like there was, I think the word he used were covert ops on on his property being appraised, and you know, most landowners, they won't be impressed by that, you know. Now, I don't know if y'all contacted him and tried to get out there, and he was not responsive to that, but I would just say, because, you know, people are making a point to talk to him face to face, and you know,
Well,
and
that's a good question.
be
I mean,
upfront,
I think
and
we have
I didn't know if
policy
that
for
was,
that, so hopefully that
Right,
policy.
and that's what we do. I mean, we
Yeah.
try to get in touch with them to make appointments. We don't just, I mean,
Sure,
most of
yeah.
the time you're gonna end up, you don't wanna drive 25 miles to get to a lock gate,
right.
you know, so we're going to
Okay.
try to make appointments with them.
Well, he was a concerned, like I said, concerned taxpayer, and he brought it up to me, you know, person to person, and asked about it, and I said I would check. I didn't know, so.
I mean, and then there are cases where we don't get responses from the gate lock
Mhm.
letter, and so, you know, by the flight, we'll try to measure the roof line on it, and we'll estimate
Sure,
But
and
you
put
don't enter
something
the
on
property
it.
without
We don't
doing
enter
it.
the property. If we don't get a response from a gate lock letter, we don't go on the property.
right.
We will
but-
measure it from the air.
And I think, you know, and I did explain to this individual that we do, you know, have some pretty serious satellite photography capabilities that we use, and you know, but still, whenever I think it was something to the effect of an appraiser sitting across the road taking pictures or something, or a neighbor's property over the fence, and it just didn't set well, so, you know.
Yeah, but frankly, if you see it from public domain. you
I
know,
understand that.
Somebody take a picture of my house.
I understand that, but it's, you know,
I know, it brings up the question.
yeah, it's just,
I think we're all sensitive.
I think it's better if you just say, hey, you know, we need to come take a look, and then if they don't respond, well then, but just,
And we
I told
we
them I
try
told
as
them I
much
would
as
ask,
we can
so.
to reach out to them.
right, okay,
How do you document that?
It's notated on the account. There's what's called an events tab, and so it'll say that a gate lock letter was sent on such and such date.
or a phone call or something, yeah.
And there have been times when we have put in there also that we called and got no answer,
Sure.
or they never called back or whatever, left a message.
Yeah, I would make certain that as much of that is documented as possible, just to, you know.
Good comments.
Everything else is really the same from the last reappraisal plan we had from 21-22.
And this is submitted to the comptroller's office.
Right, once you approve it, I have to send it to each of the entities and to the comptroller.
Okay. And the one that we did 2 years ago, that they approved it without any comments or recommended
Right,
changes.
there wasn't anything that
Okay,
they,
so anything they would have recommended, you would
I
have
would have
corrected.
already done, right.
Okay. I would like to take action on it with it being essentially the same approved appraisal plan that we've been using in the past, but I would certainly encourage you to take it home and flip through it at your leisure. And we can always ask questions of Johnette or Randall at the next meeting, not necessarily to undo the action we might take tonight, but at least to make changes going forward. So as y'all have a chance, and once again, this is 60-something pages, and we're not going to study that all tonight. So I can either table it to our next meeting, but we will need to have another meeting fairly soon to approve it, or we can take action on it tonight. What is the pleasure of my board?
If we table it, it has to be approved by September 15th.
That's what I said, we have to meet back.
So we have to
probably
be
in 2
next in
weeks.
September again.
So do you have to mail it September 15 or just approve by September 15? You don't have to mail it anywhere.
It has to be approved by September 15th, and then I mail it.
Oh,
I've been on this board 10 years, so I've seen it many times.
Yeah, I've
You
never
all
seen
have
it in my
not.
life,
So if
but-
you think you want to read it, we could have another meeting, with the calendar, and have another meeting. With us approving the budget, there would be no other reason for us to meet
Would be
in
just
September
this,
besides
right?
this. So it'd be a short
What's
meeting.
your recommendation?
Well, I'm comfortable with what they do, and the comptroller has
Yeah.
approved it in the past, so I'm comfortable with the plan, but I don't want
Okay.
you all to think that we're gonna rubber stamp something you haven't had a chance to review. But it does require us, I mean, this is pretty regimented stuff. The state
Right.
is monitoring this all the time, and they actually come in and do an annual review on site here. This is part of that as well. So this has been seen by the comptroller's office and all of the tax entities in the past, and it's
And
not
the-
being questioned.
So-
And part of the map review is they will check and see that we are doing our procedures like we say in our reappraisal.
So we're basically submitting this to them for pre-approval with the review, is that correct?
We're actually approving it here and telling them that's the action. We're saying this is our operating procedures
Okay,
here in Medina County.
okay,
So we're not asking them for approval, we're putting them on notice that this is what we have approved.
okay.
But being that it's the same one they have seen before and that they have approved it in the past without comment or question, I'm confident in saying that I don't think you all will come back with any recommendations if we meet again in 2 weeks.
Okay.
Mr. President, I move that we approve the 2023-2024 reappraisal plan.
I'll second it.
A motion and a second. Are y'all comfortable with that before I take a vote?
I am,
Yes, sir.
but I'll go through it when I have a little more time, and if
We
I have
can
any
always-
questions, I'll get with
We
you or
could red
John.
flag it and make notes as we go forward if there's something that needs to be changed. But
Okay.
that's why we both asked John Ed if there's any changes to make discussion on, and really nothing. So with that, I would call the vote. All those in favor of the motion to approve the 23-24 appraisal district reappraisal plan, please say aye.
Aye.
That motion carries. And with that, I'm going to close the public hearing on that plan and move on to our regular agenda items. The next agenda item has been going forward 18 months. As I told you before, we are under contract to purchase from Medina County, Rial County, and Uvalde County, the district attorney's office on Avenue G, which is down by the hospital, and the new district attorney in Uvalde filed suit to stop that purchase. It was approved by all of our entities, and it was approved by the commissioners of those three counties, and the district judge or attorney?
Attorney.
District attorney filed suit to stop it. As of this morning, the three counties won the suit, and the district attorney appealed it to the 4th district or wherever it goes to. That ruling from the 4th district came out today, and she was shot down. Her case has been basically dismissed, so we will be given, I think there's some, I talked to the county judge about it today, and there will be a little bit of paperwork that has to be done before they can move forward with with closing on this, but they will be notifying us soon that that litigation has been resolved and puts it back in our court. Technically, fundamentally, our contract with them has lapsed a long time ago. We were supposed to close by December, that's why I have this folder here, but anyway, by December of last year, I think.
I think so.
Yeah, and anyway, so the 3 counties were in default because they were not able to close as the contract called for. Those 3 counties will honor the contract, but it's at our discretion whether we close or whether we walk away. So the discussion at this point is, from the chair's position, I think we had a really good purchase price on the building to start with. Now we've had 18 months of appreciation and they're holding the price that they agreed to 18 months ago. I think that's a very good thing. The remodeling costs have gone up substantially during that length of time. The county has been very good to us and basically has, because of the damages that we're suffering, they have waived the monthly leases on this building at least since January of this year.
Right.
So that we have had that lease savings to help offset the construction increases. So the counties, have, especially Medina County, has been very fair and good to us. But after all this length of time, management's had enough time to assess, is that building enough for us? In a minute, I'm gonna turn that over to her. My thoughts have always been that this building is not a 25-year building, probably not even a 10-year planned building because Medina County is growing so rapidly. But for how long we've been in business? 35 years since Appraisal Districts?
Since 1981.
Okay.
41 years.
All those years, Medina County has been a tenant. And many of the appraisal districts in the state have found ways to own buildings and kind of control their own destiny. I, being a realtor, I believe in ownership rather than being tenants, so I was excited that we would get in the game of owning something. And as the years go by, you have something to sell and upgrade as necessary. It won't be this board most likely, but I was really excited that we could finally own something rather than be, tenants. So from that standpoint, I thought all was perfect, but the reality is it may not be building enough to even get us 2 or 3 years down the road with the growth of Medina County. Growth of the county probably means Johnette and Randall will be looking at increased staff, but maybe more importantly, when they have their annual appraisal review board hearings, which right now are being held in this room, this facility is not adequate for that. And probably by next year, I think we talked about it last meeting, we may have to go to 2 appraisal review boards, have 2 teams working, and those are individual citizens that the district judge chooses. The district judge chooses those, we don't, but they will pick members from the county to serve as those board members or jury. But Johnette and Randall think we're gonna have to go to 2 teams because they had 4,000 appeals.
We had almost 4,600 protests.
And those protests generally last, now some people don't show up or whatever, sometimes they call in and they resolve their differences over the phone, but the hearings last about 15 or 20 minutes. They come in and everybody's sworn in and both parties present their evidence in front of the independent board and they have to make a decision. And to get through 15 or 20 minute sessions 4,600 times.
How many did you actually do, or does it look like you?
Well, we've gone through about, we have 1,500 still open protests, so we've been through, I've scheduled 3,100 through the 23rd. We are on hearing number 420.
Because they've actually heard.
Right, so that's the bad thing is, that many people protest, but we have probably 40% that actually show up. So we have where we scheduled closed, like today, there were probably 58 to 60 hearings scheduled today, and they probably heard 10.
Well,
But you
that's
gotta
the
give them
legis-
that 15.
But you have to give them the time, and you have to schedule it because they've sent in the protest.
Can you do like can we do something to where they have to actually call and confirm 2 days before that they're coming?
Nothing by law.
This is
There's
the
nothing
state
that,
mandate.
right.
But we're talking facilities
Right.
without me moving us on to another
Okay,
subject.
fine.
But I guess I want to ask Randall and Johnette, what are your thoughts? I know I've had talks with Johnette, and she's concerned about that building not being adequate and being a citizen like all the rest of us, not working here. I say, well, go to the convention center or go to some other facility and set up shop. And so I'll let her and Randall discuss why that doesn't seem to work well. So anyway, why don't you tell us about the building, your thoughts about the building? Any
The main,
thoughts?
I mean, it's doable. The biggest problem is it's only got one boardroom. And we'd be in the same position we're at now where we have, 2.5 months of hearings, where if we could run 2 boards simultaneously, it cuts down the time that you've got ARB members here and hearing times. Like I said, it's doable.
If it were not for that month or 6 weeks of the year that y'all are having these hearings, how long do you think this potential ownership building on Avenue G, how long do you think before you would outgrow it staff-wise?
6 months. Well, the day we move in, we'll be out of space. Yeah. I think.
I'm more apt to make it doable. I have a hard time spending that much money. I mean, that's,
Well, this is my thought. And Jody knows real estate business. I guess all of y'all know some part about appreciation and inflation. If we pass on this building, my fear is we, being the Medina County Appraisal District, will be tenants for a long, long time.
right.
We have such a limited budget to own a building, and we had to go to all of our, you know this, but they don't. We had to present this proposal to all of the entities, all of the ESDs and the hospital don't get a vote in this, but school districts, municipalities, is that
In the county.
in the county, all had to approve the action. They have to approve us buying, and it's very difficult for us to borrow money, but if we were going to borrow money, they would have to approve us going into debt. And the problem with borrowing money, the state precludes us from pledging collateral. So if we needed to borrow $1 million, we'd have to go to 10 banks or whatever and ask each one of them to make a unsecured loan to the Medina County Appraisal District. So it's a task to get into ownership. And this one, we have enough money saved up, and with the savings from the rent, we think we have enough money to remodel it. So we get into the ownership position, although I'm thinking, all right, we're in a $500,000 building, and the agreed purchase price is $320,000, and if we spend $100 and something remodeling it, we're still in it under $500,000. At least a couple of years from now, if we have to go into $1 million building, we got $500,000 to sell and play the game all over again. If we don't buy the building, we're gonna need $1 million building or whatever, and have that insurmountable task. By statute, we're not supposed to just put a savings account, like we're not supposed to save up 20 years to buy something. We have kind of rattled this money, it's been in our audit, the state knows it, and the districts know it, but we have $400,000 in a CD. If it doesn't look like we're going to spend it, we need to incorporate that into next year's budget and spend the money up for operations. We're not supposed to just keep saving for a future purchase. So my heart and my business mind says, I want us to own a building and then play the upgrade when the time comes. Because I think the upgrade is going to be almost insurmountable without going through the process of borrowing a lot of money and getting the entities to approve it and finding $1 million loan. And I think I think if we went to all the county banks, I think they would all, this would be similar to a bank, because I serve on the board of directors of a bank. They loan money to churches, and they know they're never gonna foreclose on the church buildings, so when they loan money to a church, it's almost an unsecured debt as well. So I think we could raise the money, but it's still a monumental step. And from when we approved the action, was it 45 days? We had
I
like
think it
45, a short time frame to go get approval for each one of those entities. And we personally went to the superintendents or the city managers of each of those entities and said, at your very next meeting, we need y'all to approve this. And if not, you start all over. So ownership, all these other counties that own the building, I don't know how they pulled it off, or they pulled it off early before the rules got so difficult. So I want us to own the building if it makes sense. But I don't want us to own a building that Randall says they won't hardly be able to squeeze in when they move in. Although, once again, at least we would own the building. Trade up later. But, that first Cadillac's the one that's expensive. The second one, you just trade up. But that's what I'm concerned about if we don't consummate this transaction.
Is there any outdoor equipment that the appraisal district has that they've got to have a place to store? I know that building's got it's not huge, but it's got a fixed
Just
area
just
behind it.
Employee parking,
Yeah,
that's all.
Okay, well, that can be street and in back. How many employees need to park?
13.
Yeah, see, there's probably not room for 13 anyway. They're gonna be parking in the hospital parking lot.
Mhm.
But the point is, there's square footage there to where it could be added to at some point in the future.
I mean, yes, I'm sure they could lose that carport in the back and add 1,000 square foot or something back there, presumably, get into architectural issues. It's always more difficult to add on, and because you have to work with the existing footprint as far as hallways and all. But anyway, I've told you the good and the bad and the ugly, and from my vision, I'd like to hear a recommendation from Johnette. I mean, truly, would you rather, no, if you're not ready to comment, I'm gonna tell you, the county judge says the county has been in an acquisition mode. They built a big annex, they are under contract to buy the Community National Bank building and Hondo National Bank building. They're gonna have space 2 years from now. I think their purchase agreement with the Texan Bank for those two facilities is, the bank has 2 years before the county will take over those facilities. When that happens, they will have some lease space, very likely that the half of the building that's now occupied by Melissa Lutz and her people most likely will be shifted to one of those facilities. There will be space for us to lease. I don't know that we can afford to buy the Hondo National Bank building. I know we can't afford to buy the Community National Bank building. They're out of our league, but there will be space for us to expand if we are content to be tenants. And the judge says that, of course, he's only going to be the judge until December 31st, but I would think that the incoming judge would be as kind to us as far as working with affordable lease space, and, it's not the end of the world to be a tenant. It's just not what I would like. If it's affordable, I'd like for the county appraisal district to own its own building. And for the record, we are a freestanding entity. We are not an entity of the county.
No kid.
So we have our own staff, we have our own, but by law, we are absolutely a freestanding. This board of directors runs this entity with this manager.
I'm ready now.
And so we can move wherever we can afford to move to, we can lease, we can own, or whatever we are able to pull off. So we are leasing this facilities from Medina County. This building is owned by the county.
Correct, yeah, I'm aware of that.
Okay. I just wanted you to know why we're talking about this.
I understand everything we're talking about.
Okay, perfect. I never know somebody's background, so I was trying to be kind. So, what
Sitting on the commissioner's court, I know it.
was that?
Sitting on the commissioner's court, I'm aware of this.
Okay, very good, thank you. We don't have to make a decision tonight, but I would think soon we need to notify Medina County if we are going to opt out of that contract. You know, there's no real deadline other than, at some point, I would think we're gonna get a letter from the 3 county judges that says, we are now ready to close on this transaction, see at the title company.
Right.
And I think we owe them a direction of whether we intend to buy or we intend to opt out. We will not be in default because the seller has defaulted, so there will be no damages assessed to us if we don't close. But I would really think that we just need to think long and hard about opting out or moving forward. And once again, this board has to, we have to make a tough decision, but I think we need some recommendations from the chief appraiser. That's why I'm looking at you.
I know.
I've stalled long enough, let's hear from you.
Well, I mean, it's like I said, we can make it work. We're just not, we're gonna be in the same position we're in right now. We'll have no more room than we already have.
And we will go through a lot of hassle. You all, if we buy, you all, not us, are gonna have to go work with an architect, and, you know, that building's gonna have to be handicap accessible, and restrooms are gonna have to be modified, and, you know, there's gonna be some things that take your time, and if you don't think it's worthwhile, then I'm looking for a recommendation that we don't buy that building, if that's what you all think. And if you want to think about it, it's been on the agenda for months, but it's finally decision time.
Right.
And that happened today. I talked to Judge Schuhart today about the Fourth Circuit's ruling. And so if you think y'all want to study it a couple more weeks, when will we meet again?
It'll be September or October, is that when it is?
October 11th. And we can call a special meeting to talk about this. Actually, I don't think we have to take any action to not close on the defaulted contract. But I would like for it to be a decision that was made, just not show up at a closing.
Right.
So if you think you all want to think about it and analyze it, then I will give you that time to do so. But we're not going to wait till October 11th to make this decision, in my opinion.
Right.
So do you feel like you went through a lot of expense and a lot of your personal or your professional time to make ready a building that is not adequate? We thought it was 18 months ago. Well, it started 2 years ago because it took us 6 months to negotiate the contract. We thought it was adequate, but things have changed a lot. So if you think it's a mistake on the building,
So what do we do in the meantime? We're talking about maybe some office space opening up 2 years from now.
well, the reality is, this is probably where we're gonna be housed until the county can start moving some things around. They may have something else.
Well, the front end of this building will be available.
Would they be willing to
There'll
sell
be nobody in
this?
it.
When?
That's,
By the,
well,
whenever,
2
once
years
they,
from now.
once, it'd be 2 years down the
Oh,
road.
yeah,
but
yeah, any of that, whether it's all of this building, and we could propose to buy this from the county. We could propose to lease all of it from the county. We could propose, you know, then it gets back to landlord-tenant negotiations. I think that 2 years from now, the county's gonna have a lot of options, and they've always been very good to work with. But I think Clay's decision is how do we survive 2 years? We're gonna have to find some temporary housing for your appraisal review board. I think you can't have 2 board meetings.
no,
going
you
on.
can't have 2 meetings.
So we're gonna have to
Two
find
board
some-
meetings here either.
Some option for that, but that's the secondary problem. The real problem is, can you all survive here for 2 years? if we don't have, and some businessman could come up and say, I got this big building, would y'all lease it? We don't have to lease from the county. They've been very good to us, but they don't have to have us, and we need them more than they need us, most likely. But options will be available 24 months from now, but probably not much sooner.
In regards to the appraisal review board, how many people?
There's 4 board members.
4 board members, and then you're
And
gonna
then you
have,
have, we usually have 1 staff member or 2 staff members, because one runs computer and the other presents the hearing. And there'll be 1 or 2 people that are the tax, or more, depending how many people are testifying on behalf of the taxpayers.
So this is a full room when they're here.
yeah, well, I'm just curious from the standpoint of needing to run 2 boards, what it costs to rent a portable, or even a travel trailer with double opposing slide outs that's got room for 8 or 10 people for 15 minutes at a time.
Last year, the hospital offered the appraisal district use of what was the old WIC building, big red brick building on the hospital grounds that the hospital now owns. And they allowed the appraisal district free of charge to use that. And space-wise, it was adequate. It wasn't perfect, but it meant the other side of town, you know, and I guess electronically, if we have plenty of time, we can work on that. But staff had to be there and their files were here, and, you know, I think it was very cumbersome, but space could be found somewhere in the city of Hondo, whether it's county or, you know, trying to make arrangements. We even talked about trying to use the Lutheran church, and they said, well, that's during vacation Bible school, but there's different options. If we have a whole year to plan, we'll see what we can find.
Well, and like we looked at using part of the I guess we were doing the training and the voting at the annex. It just wasn't any way to have the single member panels and that kind of stuff. And it's not, because it wasn't bad when we used the WIC office over there before they started renovating. It was close enough here. It was just the fact that we had to go that far across town back and forth was the deal. I mean, like I said, having it over there wasn't bad, or having it at the courthouse or the annex isn't that bad.
Unfortunately, you all are going to be living with growing pains, whether we buy a building or whether we stay here.
Right.
Because we can't afford the $1 million building that
Right.
you all need. At some point, if we own this building or lease this entire building, there's a lot of space here.
Right.
You know, we take some remodeling, and this building's old and probably needs a lot of renovation, but nonetheless, space will be available if you all can find a way to suffer through 2 years. Appraisal review is always an annual problem, but you all have a 12-month problem as well. Is every office you have here occupied? And do you think there's a 2-year window that you all can operate with your anticipation? You know, we talked when we were doing budget, your staff, are you gonna need to hire 1 or 2 more people, or 3 or 4 more people?
One more person.
Yeah. I mean, over the next year or 2.
At least 1 over the next year,
Well,
for sure.
if we do not buy the building and move into the renovation stage and then move into that building, is staying here as good an option as moving into a building that's already too small?
Yes.
Yes?
Yeah, we're not gaining, other than ownership is the only thing we're gaining by moving into
Because
that building.
this is my opinion, if we buy that building, move into it, and we have to hire that one person, you're gonna have to add on right away. That quick.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, as far as gaining anything, we're not, other than ownership.
And maintenance issues.
I mean, as disappointed as I am from the business side of it, I can live with us not taking advantage of an opportunity, especially if that opportunity 2 years after the fact doesn't look as favorable as it did way back
Right.
then. you know, we knew it was tight. We did square footage and we toured the building, took the whole board over there. But the reality is times have changed. So are you comfortable with us taking a, I don't know if we don't really need any action because it's a non-action if we don't buy, but if you want me to write a letter, and you'll help me write a letter to the county judge that we are not intending to close on that contract, is that your recommendation?
Yeah.
Don't understand that? Not gonna object, I mean, you understand the reasons?
I mean, if you go, even if you go to that building, you're still gonna have to go off-site somewhere if you do two boards. You're just gonna have the same problem that we have right where we're
The
at.
only benefit to buying is what I said, it gets us in the game. We will own a $500,000 building. To sell, when we need $1 million building.
Right. and
I just don't know that we can rat hole this money for 2 more years. Sooner or later, the comptroller could say, how long y'all gonna sit on that CD? We're, by statute, we are not supposed to be saving for investments. I don't know how you ever buy a building when you can't
Well,
pledge
the auditor
collateral.
has always said as long as it is designated, we can.
But he's not the comptroller's office. But so far, they have to question it. So,
Right.
and I'm okay with continuing to save and rat hole the money and look at options. But
Did a contractor ever look at that over there or not?
Not a contractor. Well, we had, Nathan came and looked real quick.
Nathan Griggs.
He came and looked
Any
at it.
indication of what kind of money we're talking to?
He had told us at that time $50 a square foot to
Okay,
renovate it.
and that was back.
Oh, no, that wasn't too long
It
ago.
wasn't too
That-
long, 2-3 months ago.
Okay.
But he did, we had, she was the, I don't know, I think she was the interior designer that the county had used, Ruth Jordan is her name. She did a little footprint and kind of moved a couple walls and some other things to retrofit it for us.
Mhm.
The only thing Nathan was concerned with was verifying that they weren't load-bearing walls. And he said he'd have to probably get up in the attic, and he hasn't been back to get up in the attic to see where the, how the load-bearing walls are and what walls we can and can't move.
But that's where we get back. I thought we had enough budget to do that, but there's no point in spending the budget. And it's gonna take these folks a lot of time dealing with architects and contractors and all that. We have to get bids. So to go through all that for a building that doesn't take care of our needs is probably a wasted effort. And that's your recommendation.
I think so. I mean, like I said, it's, the only thing we'd be gaining is that we would have real estate, that's it.
But we have to then,
And then we'd have to turn around and start looking for another building.
so with that, unless I hear somebody on this board telling me, stop and let's rethink this, it's gonna be my recommendation or my advice to the board that we're gonna notify, Medina County Judge and I guess the other 2 counties that we will not be closing on that defaulted contract. Doesn't take board action for us not to buy a building. Y'all comfortable with that? Okay,
Let's sleep on it a couple of days before you do that.
okay.
Can you maybe shoot an email?
Since it's a non-action item, if you all start regretting us taking no action, let me know soon. And if so, we will reconvene and talk about our options. But right now, if this doesn't look like a good option, y'all think about it and make sure you're comfortable with me writing that letter. Be proper, I don't need board action to just notify them that that defaulted contract is not gonna be closed. And I asked the judge if that's all I needed to do, and he said yes. He said technically I don't have to do anything.
Right.
He can't make us come to closing. But anyway, but as a courtesy to all 3 county judges, I think we'll notify them soon of our intent, so they can make plans.
Back to the bank buildings, are they not gonna have a building in town, or are they building a new one somewhere?
It's my understanding, I'm not on that bank board, but it's my understanding that Texan Bank is going to build a new building where the Christensen furniture store is.
Walmart building.
Behind the building. But they need approximately 2 years to get that done and then vacate the 2 premises that Medina County has agreed to purchase. That's, I guess that's all official. I think that's my understanding of what's happening. But, so anyway, so space is still going to be tight until something starts moving around, and I don't think there's anything else that I can think of that's going to be available sooner than that. Okay, well, that's the discussion on the update of purchase. And unless I ask you to put that back on future agendas, because I don't
We can take
get
that
off
off.
of my future agendas, if that's the case.
Wasn't there another building that you had mentioned before? Where was that? When we,
Oh, we had looked over at, on 18th Street, Sheldon Growth House had, part of it that hadn't been finished out yet, and he was offering it to us.
But
But
that was 2 years ago.
it's 2 years ago, and it's
Yeah.
smaller
Yeah,
than
now it's
that
probably $2
one.
million for a shell.
Yeah.
Right, well, and it's
Instead
a
of $1 million,
lot
yeah,
smaller
so-
than that building over there even, so.
Well, anyway, moving on the agenda, thanks for that question, but since there's not a line item
Right.
discussion, this time I'm going to turn it over to Johnette, the Chief Appraiser's report.
We kind of talked about, part of it, we still have hearings going on. Right now, it looks like probably 10% of what's protested will be coming off, due to the hearings, and we're hoping to get through by the end of August, 1st of September with everything, and get final numbers done.
You've already certified and you'll just amend the
Right,
certified
we've-
values?
We've sent a certified estimate, we're still about 6% under protest, so we can't actually certify. And once we get the 95%, then the board will sign off on that, and then once they've done 100%, they'll sign off on 100%.
And at 95%, when do you think that will be date-wise?
Should be probably this week.
Okay. And what do we need to do to sign off on that so that you can deliver that to the entities?
The ARB does,
Okay.
they sign off on it once they've reached 95% approved.
Okay.
Then they'll sign off on it, then we'll send adjusted numbers to the entities, and they'll continue calculating rates.
Okay.
What's been the result of the protests so far? Is it knocking a lot of values
Not
down
too
or not?
bad. Hadn't been anything substantial that has come off. They'll adjust a couple of percent on the residences unless the sales indicate something differently. But most of the time, they'll just depreciate a little bit for age. Or if they've got damage from the storms, that's been some of it too. They've still got repairs that weren't done after the first. But we tried to get most of those taken care of before we sent notices. But that's really been it. There's not been a big substantial change in anything.
Okay.
What else you got for us?
That's it.
Anything in particular that we need to have our minds wrapped around for our October 11th meeting? What will we be having on that agenda that is?
Probably getting ready to send out depository. That'll be on there.
Okay.
And then we'll have to decide on that by December 1st, I believe.
Okay. And no other statutory timeframe within this that we have?
No,
Make
that's the
sure
only
that
thing
they-
that's coming up is the depository.
Okay.
And then next year, at that time, would be new board members again.
in January,
In January, the following year?
The following,
Okay.
23rd?
the end of 23 coming on, starting 24.
When you have the MAC review, which is, what's that stand for again?
Methods and Assistance Program.
Which is the review that comes from the comptroller's office. They have the schedule, the score sheet.
They will probably start requesting data in November.
Right.
So
My
we'll start
question to
sending
you
those.
is, are you very confident you can check all the boxes?
I think so. Unless they throw something in there that's new. I looked over it, because they did the same review for 22 that they do for 23, and there's nothing in there that we're not doing.
Okay. I mean, we've gone through revamp and asked you all to make sure you all are organized and make sure somebody is responsible for practically every page in that review, and you feel good with it. Not that you're gonna put your head on the chopping block, but I'm just
Oh, I know.
curious for your,
Yeah,
you
no.
bet your confidence level is good. Okay.
Like I said, there's nothing that stands out that's gonna put us in a bind.
Okay.
Everything's procedural.
Okay. Anything else that you all would ask me to put on a future agenda, or any curiosities that we want Chief Appraiser to be ready to answer next time? By the way, those questions can be raised anytime between meetings. I do meet with Johnette either on phone or in her office before we have meetings, so we can make sure those items are on a future agenda if you all have questions.
Okay.
And sometimes they don't even have to be an action item, it can just be a question. I'll make sure Johnette is ready to answer. Anything else? I try to keep my meetings to an hour, and we're just about there, so I think we're done. If there's nothing else that you all, is there something else? We don't have any executive session. We seldom have executive sessions, so we won't have that. And item number 16 is to set the date and time for our next meeting, and it's recommended that that would be October 11th at 6 o'clock. And if you know of any conflict, but if y'all see that we cannot make a quorum, let me know sooner than later and we can reschedule. But for now, we will set that as our next meeting date. And with that, I will adjourn the meeting at 7. No, we can sign this after. Okay, we'll sign the minutes. 7:06. Okay, well, thanks.
Thank you.